It was 2:47 a.m. when I first heard it. The soft rustling of a whisper in the darkness. A voice, barely audible, but distinct. It wasn't the kind of sound that would wake most people up, but for some reason, it woke me. I wasn't even sure what had caused the disturbance at first. A shift in the air, a soft movement, a creak in the floorboards, until I noticed the phone. Clara's phone. It was sitting on the nightstand between us, its screen illuminated, casting a pale light over the room. At first, I thought nothing of it. It wasn't uncommon for her to check messages late at night, especially after a long day. But something about the way the phone glowed in the quiet of the room seemed off. The whispering came again. A name this time. Call me soon. Don't forget about tonight. I don't know why I did it, but I picked up her phone. I wasn't planning on snooping. I swear I wasn't. But there was something about the way the words were written, the way they hung in the air, like a puzzle piece that didn't fit, urging me to put the pieces together. So I unlocked it. I didn't think about what that meant at the time. I just did it. The messages were brief, but they were enough. Enough to make my pulse race. Enough to make my stomach twist in a way I hadn't felt in years. Her phone wasn't just glowing with an innocent notification. It was filled with a series of texts. Text from a number I didn't recognize, but the name attached to it made the room feel colder. I can't wait to see you again tonight, Clara. I'm counting down the minutes. The words hit me like a slap across the face. Clara? My Clara? The woman I had shared everything with? The woman who, just hours earlier, had kissed me goodnight and rolled over to fall asleep beside me? I didn't know what to think. My mind was a blur of confusion and disbelief. There had to be an explanation, right? There had to be some logical, reasonable answer. Maybe it was just a joke? Maybe some harmless flirtation? But something deep inside me told me that wasn't it. The next message hit me like a thunderclap. It was a photo. I stared at the screen, frozen in place. The image wasn't explicit, but it didn't need to be. It was enough to send a jolt through my entire body. It was a picture of Clara. It wasn't a candid, cute shot or a fun selfie. It was a picture of her in a dress I'd never seen before, taken from an angle I didn't recognize. The caption read, "You look stunning tonight. Can't wait to feel your touch again." I felt my heart sink. Everything I thought I knew about her, about us, was slipping away in those few seconds. This wasn't the woman I had married. It wasn't the person I had trusted with my heart. This was someone else. Someone who had been hiding something from me. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I sat there, in the dark, holding her phone, trying to understand how I had missed all the signs. How had I not noticed? Had I been so blind? The thoughts started spiraling. I had always been the kind of guy who noticed everything, who prided himself on being aware. But somehow I had missed this. I had missed the small changes in her behavior, the way she seemed to be distracted, the way her phone was always within arm's reach. I set the phone back down on the nightstand. Clara stirred beside me, turning over and mumbling something in her sleep. But I couldn't sleep. Not anymore. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she had her reasons. Maybe there was some explanation I just wasn't seeing. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. This was not a misunderstanding. This was betrayal. The worst part? I couldn't bring myself to wake her up, to ask her what was going on. I was terrified of what I would hear, terrified of what the truth would be. So instead, I lay there in the dark, the weight of the phone's glow still lingering in my mind, and waited for the morning. I thought about the whispered message, the one that had woken me up. Don't forget about tonight. What did that mean? Who was she meeting? Where was she going? And then, as if on cue, my thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her phone buzzing again. I had never been more unsure of anything in my life. The buzz of her phone was almost unbearable. It wasn't loud enough to wake her, but it was loud enough to echo in the silence between us. I couldn't stop myself. I didn't want to touch it again. I didn't want to go any further down this rabbit hole, but I was already so far and I didn't know how to climb out. I picked up the phone again, the cold screen reflecting my face. The message was simple. One line, but it hit me like a brick wall. I'm already here, waiting for you. Don't be late. I felt the blood drain from my face. I wasn't even sure I was breathing. There was no mistaking it. Clara wasn't just talking to someone. She was meeting someone. And from the tone of the messages, it wasn't just a friend. It was something else. Something deeper, more intimate. The word waiting echoed in my head, and I couldn't shake the image of her slipping out of bed, quietly making her way to meet him, her steps so light that I never would have known. But there was more. Of course, there was more. I opened the thread of messages, scrolling back through everything. My mind raced, the words a blur, but I had to read it all. I had to know. There was no going back now. The more I read, the clearer it became. Clara wasn't just hiding something. She was living another life, one I had no part in. The messages weren't sporadic. They were frequent, almost like a secret routine they had developed over time. And then I found the one that broke me. It wasn't a message. It was a location. The words were so innocuous at first. A simple address. But the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I recognized the address. It was a hotel, one that we'd passed by a dozen times. A place that I had never given a second thought about. But now it was the place where Clara was meeting him. I felt like the room was closing in on me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone, to throw everything into chaos. But I didn't. I couldn't. I was paralyzed. And in that moment, I realized that I had been living in a lie. Clara had been lying to me for months, maybe longer. And I had been too blind, too trusting to see it. I glanced over at her. She was still asleep, her face soft and peaceful, as if nothing had changed. As if everything was still perfect between us. But I knew better. I could no longer ignore the truth staring me in the face. She was planning to meet someone else. And I wasn't the one she was excited to see. I couldn't breathe. The betrayal felt suffocating. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to scream and demand answers. But I was too afraid of what I would hear. What if she told me it was true? What if she didn't even try to hide it? I wasn't ready for that. I tried to push it out of my mind. It wasn't supposed to be this way. We were supposed to be happy. But as I lay there, the hum of the air conditioner the only sound in the room, I couldn't stop thinking about the messages. I couldn't stop thinking about how Clara, the woman I had married, had been living a double life. The night dragged on, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of Clara's phone, the glowing screen, came back to me. Every message, every word, every photo was burned into my mind. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what. In the early hours of the morning, I finally got up. My feet felt heavy as I moved toward the kitchen, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I needed air. I needed to clear my head. I had to think, to process. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. As I stood by the window, staring out at the darkened streets, a thought crossed my mind. A terrifying thought. Maybe this wasn't just a one-time thing. Maybe Clara wasn't just meeting him tonight. Maybe this was the beginning of something bigger. Maybe she had already made up her mind. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just losing my wife. I was losing everything I thought I knew about her. I felt sick. Every step I took from that point forward felt like walking through a fog. I couldn't trust myself. I couldn't trust her. And worst of all, I didn't know what I was supposed to do next. But I had to find out. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to know the truth. The air in the apartment felt thick. I couldn't escape the heaviness that hung over me. The weight of the phone still in my hand. The screen glowing like a cruel reminder of everything that had been shattered. I had to find out what was going on. I couldn't sit around anymore pretending that nothing was wrong. But I also knew that confronting her would change everything. I wasn't ready for that, not fully. I glanced over at Clara, still sleeping soundly, her steady breath the only thing that kept the silence from suffocating me. She had no idea. She had no idea that I knew. I had no idea how to approach this, how to even start. I sat back down on the edge of the bed, staring at her. My mind was spinning. My chest was tight. There was a part of me that wanted to wake her up, demand answers right there. But another part of me was terrified of what would happen once I did. What if she confessed? What if she didn't? I decided I needed to get out of the apartment. I couldn't stay in that room another second. I grabbed my coat, slipped on my shoes, and made my way to the door. Dan. Her voice was soft, groggy, as she stirred in bed. Where are you going? I turned to face her, forcing a smile. Just going for a walk. Clear my head. She blinked, still half asleep, then nodded, mumbling something I didn't quite catch. Her eyes drifted back to the pillow, and I was out the door before she could ask anything else. The cold air outside felt like a slap in the face. I walked aimlessly, trying to clear my head, but my thoughts kept spiraling back to that phone, those messages. Clara had been meeting someone. She had been hiding it from me. I couldn't believe it. It was one thing to have suspicions, but another entirely to have proof. I was drowning in the truth, and I didn't know how to swim back to shore. I passed the coffee shop we always went to on weekends, the one with the red awning and the chalkboard sign outside. It reminded me of better times, simpler times. Times before I knew this truth, before my world was turned upside down by a single, innocuous message. I found myself at the park, sitting on a bench beneath a streetlight. The city was quiet at this hour. The only sounds were the distant hum of traffic and the occasional rustling of leaves in the trees. It should have been peaceful, but all I could hear was the echo of Clara's voice. The laughter we used to share. The promises she made. I pulled out her phone again, unwilling to let it go. I thought about going through the messages again, but I stopped myself. I had already seen enough. What I needed was to face her, to force her to look me in the eye and tell me what was going on. But how could I do that? How could I even begin to approach a conversation that could tear apart everything? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it wasn't what it seemed. Maybe I had misread something. Maybe she was just distracted, confused. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The messages were too clear. The way they spoke to each other was too intimate, too familiar. This wasn't a misunderstanding. I couldn't escape the feeling that something had been happening for much longer than I had realized. I had been blind to it, dismissing the signs, convincing myself everything was fine. But it wasn't. I glanced at the time. It was almost 4 a.m. I couldn't put it off any longer. I had to go back. I had to face the truth, whatever it was. As I walked back toward the apartment, every step felt heavier than the last. My heart was pounding in my chest, my mind racing with 1,000 possibilities, none of them good. What was I going to say? How could I even begin to ask her what was going on without sounding like a fool? I reached the door to the apartment, hesitated for a moment, and then opened it. The apartment was still quiet. Clara hadn't woken up. I felt a strange mixture of relief and guilt wash over me. I wasn't ready to talk to her. Not yet. But I knew that soon, I would have to. The truth was already staring me in the face, and I couldn't run from it any longer. I walked into the living room and sat on the couch, my hands shaking as I tried to collect myself. I stared at the phone in my hand again, the weight of it pressing against me. But I couldn't do this alone anymore. I couldn't hide from the truth. I had to talk to her. I had to confront her. But in that moment, I wasn't sure I was strong enough to hear the answer. And then, as if on cue, Clara's voice broke through the silence. She was standing in the doorway, looking at me with a mixture of concern and confusion. "Dan," she said softly, "what's going on? You've been acting weird all morning." I froze, caught in the moment I had been dreading. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. She walked toward me, and for a moment, I thought she was going to sit down beside me, but she stopped, standing a few feet away. Her eyes were searching mine, as if waiting for me to explain myself. And that's when I knew. It was time. I had to ask. I had to know. "Clara," I said, my voice hoarse, "who's Elliot?" Her face went white. The words hung in the air like a thunderstorm waiting to break. The name I had mentioned, Elliot, echoed in the room, lingering in the space between us. Clara froze. Her eyes widened, and for a split second, I saw a flash of panic cross her face. It was subtle, but it was there. The way her lips parted as if she were searching for the right words, but none came. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I didn't know what to expect, but I wasn't ready for this. I had been mentally preparing myself for a confrontation, but nothing prepared me for the way she reacted. The way she just stopped. She stood there, motionless, and for a moment, I could see the mask she had been wearing crack. The confidence, the calm exterior she had shown me every day, was slipping. I wasn't sure what I had expected, but it wasn't this. Clara finally spoke, but her voice was shaky, unsure. "What do you mean?" Her words were soft, almost like she was trying to deflect, but there was a hint of defensiveness in her tone. "What is this about, Dan?" I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't sure how to. The truth was staring me in the face, but I needed her to say it. I needed to hear it from her. I needed to know if what I had read was real. I saw the messages, Clara. The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them, and as soon as they did, I saw her tense up. I didn't care how I said it anymore. I didn't care if I sounded like I was accusing her of something terrible. I had to know. "What messages?" she asked, her voice a little higher now, almost frantic. She took a step back, as if she were trying to put space between us, but I wasn't backing down. "The ones from Elliot," I said again, the words sharper this time. "The ones where you're meeting him. The ones where you're talking to him like you've been hiding something from me." Her eyes darted toward the phone, which I had carelessly left on the coffee table. I could see her mind racing, trying to find a way out of this. But there was no escape. Not anymore. You went through my phone? She asked, her voice faltering. I could hear the anger building, but there was something else behind it. Guilt. Shame. I didn't want to, I said, standing up now, facing her head on. But I had to know, Clara. I had to know why you've been acting like this. Why you've been distant. Why you've been sneaking around. Her face flushed. Dan, you don't understand, she began, her hands trembling as she tried to gather her thoughts. It's not what you think. I could feel my chest tighten, the words I had been holding in for so long threatening to explode. Then what is it, Clara? I demanded, stepping closer to her. What is it if not what I think? For a moment, she just stood there, looking at me as if she were trying to decide whether or not to tell me the truth. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Then, finally, she spoke. I've been seeing someone, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hit me like a physical blow. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I just stood there, staring at her, waiting for more, but I didn't know what else to say. This was it. The truth. The one I had feared, but also knew deep down was coming. I didn't want to hurt you, she continued, her eyes filling with tears. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop seeing him. I could feel the world around me spinning, but I couldn't look away. This was my wife. The woman I had trusted with everything. The woman who had just confessed that she was seeing someone else. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. Why hadn't I seen the signs? Why hadn't I noticed the distance between us sooner? But there was no time for answers now. The damage had already been done. I took a step back, shaking my head. How long? I asked, my voice hoarse. Months, she whispered, the guilt written all over her face. I'm so sorry, Dan. I never meant for it to go this far. But I couldn't stop myself. Months. I couldn't process it. I thought back to the nights I had spent alone, the times I had trusted her to be at work or out with friends, while she was with him. I felt like I was drowning in betrayal. I never thought it would come to this, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't want to hurt you, but I was trying to fill a void that I couldn't talk about. I couldn't stand there any longer. I turned away, needing space, needing air. The weight of her confession pressed down on me like a ton of bricks. I had always thought I knew her. I had always thought we were fine, that everything between us was strong. But now, standing there in front of her, I realized how little I actually knew. I ran my hand through my hair, trying to steady myself. How could you do this to me, Clara? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. How could you betray me like this? She didn't answer. She just stood there, tears streaming down her face. And in that silence, I realized that I wasn't just losing my wife. I was losing everything I thought I knew about us. The weight of the moment hung in the air, suffocating, and I didn't know how to breathe through it. I could barely process what she had just confessed. Months. The word echoed in my mind like a drumbeat. I couldn't look at her anymore. I needed space, air, anything to clear the fog that had clouded my thoughts. I turned away, pacing back and forth across the living room, my mind spinning. Clara's voice cracked. Dan, please, don't walk away from me. We need to talk about this. Her words felt distant, like they came from someone else, someone I didn't recognize. Every step I took felt heavier, as though the gravity of her betrayal was pulling me down. I don't even know who you are anymore, I muttered under my breath. But I knew she heard me. She flinched, but stayed silent. I needed to understand. I couldn't just let this go. Not now, not like this. My mind raced. Months. I had been living in a lie for months. The thought of it made my stomach churn. The worst part? I still didn't know the full truth. She had confessed to the affair, but there were so many things left unsaid. I stopped pacing and faced her. Her eyes were red from crying, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. Not yet. How did this happen, Clara? How did you let this go on for so long? She wiped her eyes, struggling to find the words. I don't know. It just happened. I wasn't looking for it, but she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. But what? I asked, my voice tight with frustration. You weren't looking for it? You're telling me that you didn't make a choice, that this just happened to you? She hesitated, and for a moment, I thought she might tell me the truth. The whole truth. But then, she just nodded. I made a mistake. I was looking for something I wasn't getting at home, and I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't stop. Her voice faltered as she spoke, but the words were cutting deep. I felt the anger rising within me, boiling over. You couldn't stop? That's your excuse? You could have talked to me, Clara. We could have figured this out together. I didn't know how, she whispered, looking down. I thought I could fix it on my own, but I couldn't. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I felt sick. I thought of all the nights she'd come home late, of all the times I'd asked if something was wrong, and she'd always said, "Nothing, Dan. I'm just tired." All those excuses, those empty reassurances, and now I knew why. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, to break everything in sight. But I couldn't. I was too broken. Who is he, Clara? I asked, the question hanging in the air between us like a final verdict. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out at first. I saw the fear in her eyes. She knew what I was asking. She knew what I needed to hear. His name is Tom, she finally whispered. I met him at work. He was there for me when I needed someone to talk to. He understood me. I felt the room spin. Tom. I didn't know who he was, but I didn't need to. I could already picture him. The way he must have looked at her, the way he made her feel like she mattered when I wasn't around. The thought of it twisted something deep inside me. Do you love him? I asked before I could stop myself. The question came out like a shot, raw and unfiltered. Her eyes widened, and she shook her head quickly. No, I don't love him. I don't. It's not like that, Dan. But I didn't believe her. I couldn't. The way she looked at me, the way her voice cracked when she spoke, told me everything I needed to know. She was lying. Or at least, she was lying to herself. If she didn't love him, then why had she kept seeing him? Why had she kept this secret from me for so long? I could feel the anger bubbling up again, but this time, it wasn't just anger at her. It was anger at myself for letting it go on this long. I had been so blind, so caught up in the idea of what we had that I didn't see the cracks forming underneath. I don't know what to say to you, Clara, I said, my voice low and steady. I don't even know who you are anymore. She took a step toward me, but I held up my hand, stopping her. Don't. Just don't. I can't do this right now. I turned away from her, unable to look at her anymore. The woman I had trusted, the woman I thought I knew, had shattered everything, and I didn't know how to put the pieces back together. I walked to the door. I need to get out of here. Clara's voice broke through the silence, soft but desperate. Dan, please. Please don't leave. We can fix this. We can work through it. I didn't respond. I just walked out the door, the cold air hitting me like a slap to the face. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. Not with her. Not with the truth hanging over us. The worst part? I had no idea what was going to happen next. The night air was cool against my skin as I stepped outside, my mind racing, my thoughts a jumble of hurt and confusion. I wasn't sure where I was going, just that I needed to be away from her, away from the apartment, away from the place where everything I knew had just been destroyed. The weight of her words, of her confession, pressed down on me like a 1,000-pound stone. I walked aimlessly through the streets, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the quiet night. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. I didn't want to talk to anyone right now, not even my best friend, Ben, who I could already imagine calling to check on me. I didn't want anyone to see me like this, to know the mess I had gotten myself into. Eventually, I found myself standing in front of a small park. The swings creaked in the breeze, the streetlights casting long, lonely shadows across the empty paths. I sat down on one of the benches, trying to calm my racing thoughts, but the more I thought about Clara, the more the anger swelled up inside me. She had betrayed me. She had been seeing him, lying to my face for months. And I had no idea. It was then that I realized how much of my life had been a lie. The small things she had done, the subtle changes in her behavior, they weren't just coincidences. They were signs I had ignored because I didn't want to see them. How had I not noticed? How had I missed all the red flags? I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen. Clara had sent me a few messages, but I hadn't read them. I didn't want to. I knew what she was going to say. She was going to apologize, tell me how sorry she was, but I didn't care about that anymore. It didn't matter. Her words didn't matter. The damage had already been done. Suddenly, a thought struck me. Tom. She had said his name so casually, like it was nothing. I could feel the jealousy burning in my chest. Who was this guy? What did he have that I didn't? Was he better than me in every way? Was he what she had been looking for all along? I ran my fingers through my hair, trying to fight back the wave of emotions crashing over me. The anger, the sadness, the confusion, it was all too much. I had no answers, and the worst part was that I didn't know if I wanted them anymore. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. How could I? I stood up, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. I needed to go back. I needed to face her, to figure out what came next. But part of me didn't know if I was ready to hear the rest of the truth, if there was even more to this story. Had I been a fool? Had I missed everything? All the signs that Clara had been slipping away? When I walked back to the apartment, I was surprised to see the light in the living room still on. She was waiting for me. Clara was sitting on the couch when I stepped inside. Her eyes were red from crying, but she didn't look at me when I entered. She just sat there, waiting for me to speak. The silence between us was suffocating. I could feel the tension crackling in the air, and it was almost unbearable. Dan, her voice was barely a whisper. I'm so sorry. I didn't respond. I couldn't. There was nothing she could say to make it right. The words felt meaningless now. Everything had changed. She stood up slowly, her eyes pleading with me to listen. Please, Dan, I know I've messed up, but I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen. I shook my head, backing away from her. You don't get it, Clara. It's not just about you messing up. It's about everything. About how you've been lying to me. About how you've been living a life that I had no part in. How could you do this to me? Clara took a step forward, but I held up my hand to stop her. Don't come near me. The words hung in the air, thick with emotion. I could see her fighting to hold back tears, but I didn't care. I wasn't sure if I cared about anything anymore. All I could think about was the betrayal, the trust that had been shattered in an instant. I know I've destroyed everything, she said softly, but I need you to understand that I never meant for it to go this far. I was just lost. I was so lost, Dan. You're lost, I repeated, almost laughing bitterly. You're lost, and so you thought the answer was to go sleep with someone else? That's how you fixed it? I don't know what I was thinking, she said, her voice shaking. I made a mistake, and I don't know how to take it back. But I love you, Dan. I swear, I love you. I looked at her, feeling nothing but a cold emptiness. How can I believe that? After everything you've done? How can I trust you now? Clara collapsed onto the couch, her hands over her face, sobbing. I stood there, watching her, unsure of what to do, unsure of what I wanted. Part of me wanted to walk out that door and never look back. But another part of me, maybe the part that had loved her for so long, wanted to fix this, to find some way to put us back together. But I didn't know if it was possible. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. I didn't know how long I stood there, just watching her. The silence in the room felt like a living thing, pressing down on both of us. I could hear her breathing, ragged and uneven, as she tried to pull herself together. Her sobs were raw, painful, and I hated that I couldn't feel sorry for her. I hated that all I could feel was the sting of betrayal, a bitter, cold sensation that wouldn't leave. I turned away from her, pacing again. I needed to do something. I needed to get out of that apartment, out of that space that now felt like a cage. I don't know if I can do this, Clara, I said, my voice quiet but firm. My own words surprised me, like they weren't even my own. It wasn't a question, it wasn't even an accusation anymore. It was just a statement of fact. I don't know if I can live with this. Her sobs quieted, and I felt her eyes on me, like a weight, but I couldn't look at her. I couldn't face her and see the woman I thought I knew. Because now, I was starting to see the truth. The pieces of her that I had ignored, the cracks I had missed in our relationship, all of it had been there. And I had been too blind to notice. Dan, please. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. Please don't leave. I can't lose you. I clenched my fists, trying to hold myself together. But there was a part of me, a dark part, that wanted to walk out that door and never look back. Could I? Could I really walk away from the life I had built with her? The life I thought we had. Do you really love me, Clara? I asked, my voice strained. Do you? Because I don't know if I can keep going like this. She stood up, her face a mask of desperation. I do love you, Dan. I made a huge mistake, and I know I can never take it back. But I need you to believe me when I say I'm sorry. I need you to believe me when I say I want to fix this. The words sounded hollow, like she was reciting them from a script. She sounded like someone who was sorry, but didn't know how to fix what was broken. Words, I muttered bitterly. That's all you have left, Clara. Just words. There was a long pause before she spoke again, and when she did, her voice was softer, quieter. I don't know how to make this right. I wish I could, but I can't change what I did. All I can do is ask you to forgive me. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the trust had been shattered beyond repair. Every part of me screamed that it wasn't just about the affair. It was about everything that had led up to it. The lies, the secrets, the things we had never talked about, the things we should have talked about. I took a deep breath, turning to face her for the first time since she had confessed. The tears in her eyes were the only sign of the guilt she felt, but I couldn't find it in me to care about that right now. My heart had already been torn apart. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Clara, I said, my voice low. And I don't know if I even want to try anymore. Her face crumpled, her lips trembling as if she were fighting back another wave of tears. Dan, please. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to betray you like this. But it didn't matter. Not anymore. It was too late for apologies. Too late for promises. Everything she said, everything she did from this point on felt like an attempt to undo something that couldn't be undone. I turned away, shaking my head, feeling the weight of every decision I had made up until that point. Every time I had trusted her, every time I had believed in us. It felt like it was all slipping through my fingers, like sand falling through a cracked hand. Dan, her voice cracked as she stepped closer, but I held up my hand, stopping her. I can't do this right now, I said, the words barely coming out. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe. I need space. I need time to think. And with that, I left. The days that followed felt like an eternity. I stayed at a friend's place for a while, trying to piece together everything that had happened. My mind was constantly swirling with questions. Should I forgive her? Could I? Was our marriage worth fighting for? Or was it too broken to repair? Clara reached out constantly, but I couldn't bring myself to speak to her. I needed space, and more importantly, I needed time. Time to think, to process everything. The betrayal still stung like it had happened yesterday, but something inside me kept telling me not to give up on us just yet. As the days passed, the anger began to fade, replaced by a painful but necessary reflection. I had been angry with Clara, yes, but I had also been angry with myself, for not seeing the signs, for not being more aware, for letting things get so bad that we lost sight of what we once had. One afternoon, I decided to face the truth, to go back and talk to her. I wasn't sure where things would go, but I knew that I couldn't avoid it any longer. When I walked into the apartment, Clara was sitting on the couch, her face pale and tired. She stood up when she saw me, her eyes brimming with hope. Dan, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, watching her, trying to read the woman who had been my wife for so long. I saw the guilt, the regret in her eyes, but I also saw something else, a willingness to change, to work through the pain, to rebuild what had been broken. Finally, I spoke. Clara, I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can forget what happened, but I need to know that you're willing to do whatever it takes to fix this, to make things right. She nodded immediately, her eyes flooding with relief. I will, Dan. I promise you, I will do whatever it takes. I know I've made the biggest mistake of my life, and I'll spend every day trying to earn back your trust. There was no magic fix, no quick resolution. Trust takes time, and healing doesn't happen overnight. But as I looked at her, I realized that I wasn't ready to give up on our marriage. Not yet. We had both made mistakes, and we both had to work hard to make things right. I'm willing to try, I said, my voice steady but filled with uncertainty. But it's going to take time. I need to see that you're committed, that this isn't just a moment of regret. It's a long road ahead. Clara, are you ready for that? I'm ready, she replied, her voice firm now, no hesitation. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Over the next few months, we worked on rebuilding what had been torn apart. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments where I wondered if we were fooling ourselves. But through it all, Clara showed me that she was willing to fight for us. She was patient, she listened, and slowly, we started to rebuild our trust. We went to therapy, talked through our issues, and most importantly, we learned to communicate again, something we had both neglected. One evening, after a long day of talking and working through our issues, Clara took my hand as we sat on the porch, watching the sunset. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in a long while, and saw the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago. I'm sorry, she whispered, her eyes soft. I never want to hurt you again. I know, I said, squeezing her hand. And I think I can start to believe you again. We sat there in silence, but it wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence we'd had before. It was peaceful, comfortable. We had a long road ahead of us, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But we were both committed to making it work. And that, I realized, was enough to start rebuilding. The past could never be erased, but the future was ours to shape. Together.